On October 23, 2006, in the city of Liverpool, England, what began as a regular afternoon stroll for one family would spiral into one of the most chilling cases of alleged reincarnation ever documented. Sarah and Michael McKenna were walking hand in hand with their 5-year-old son Ryan through the heart of downtown Liverpool. Then, suddenly, Ryan stopped dead in his tracks in front of a record store. His little eyes locked onto a giant Beatles poster hanging in the window. "Mom, that's me," he whispered. "That's who I was when I was famous." Sarah laughed nervously, trying to brush it off. "Sweetheart, that's the Beatles. They're a really old band." But Ryan didn't laugh. He didn't even blink. He raised a tiny finger and pointed straight at John Lennon. With an unsettling certainty, he repeated, "No, Mom, that's me. I was famous. I sang for a lot of people. They were yelling really loud." Sarah felt a cold shiver crawl up her spine. How could a 5-year-old even know about the Beatles? They had never played that music at home. They never talked about old bands. Ryan had barely learned to speak just 2 years earlier. His father tried to stay calm. "Ryan, you've never seen this photo before in your life." Ryan shook his head firmly. "Yes, I have, Dad. I remember when they took this photo. It was really hot that day." And then he added something that froze both parents in place. Paul was nervous. Paul, as in Paul McCartney. How could he possibly know that? The boy's expression hardened. "I can prove I'm him," Ryan said, his voice carrying the seriousness of an adult. "I know things no one else does. I know where I hid special stuff. I know songs I never sang to anyone." Sarah squeezed her son's hand, trying to calm him. "Let's go home, Ryan." He nodded, but his eyes didn't soften. "Okay, Mom, but one day you'll believe me, I promise." What they had just witnessed was only the beginning. Experts in reincarnation would later call this case one of the most documented and disturbing investigations of the last 50 years. Because in the weeks that followed, Ryan began to change. At home, the 5-year-old started humming intricate tunes he had never heard before. When Sarah asked him where he'd learned them, Ryan calmly replied, "I wrote them when I was older." The first truly terrifying moment happened at the dinner table. Ryan was playing with his toy cars when he suddenly shifted into perfect English spoken with a 1960s Liverpool accent. This was not a child pretending. His tone, his phrasing, it was like someone else had slipped into his body. "I used to live in a big white house with Yoko," he murmured. "She had long black hair. She always wore white." Sarah pushed back from the table trembling. "Ryan, where did you hear those words? Who's Yoko?" Ryan looked up with eyes far older than his years. "She was my wife, Mom. I miss her a lot." But the incident that would completely shatter their sense of reality came a week later. Michael decided to test him. He played some Beatles music on the stereo. When the song "Here Comes the Sun" began to play, Ryan bolted to the sound system, shouting, "Turn it off! Turn it off! George is playing my guitar!" His parents froze. How did he know George Harrison was the guitarist on that track? And why did he call it his guitar? Ryan began to sob uncontrollably. "Mom, I wrote that song. I wrote it for Julian. It was for my boy." Sarah picked him up, but he pushed against her, crying harder. "Mom, why can't I play my instruments? Where are my guitars? Where's my white piano?" That night, Sarah and Michael couldn't sleep. Their 5-year-old son wasn't just talking about John Lennon. He was speaking as if he truly was John Lennon. And 3 weeks later, desperate for answers, they made a decision. On November 18, 2006, they would take Ryan to the Beatles Museum in Liverpool. If this was just a fantasy, the museum would put an end to it. But what happened inside those walls would only deepen the nightmare.
Music tells stories, but sometimes it tells the wrong ones. Michael McKenna sat at his desk, headphones pressed to his ears, replaying the recording of his 5-year-old son's song. He had listened a dozen times, maybe more. The melody was intricate, the chord progressions sophisticated, the kind of thing no child could possibly invent. But what unsettled him most wasn't the notes. It was the voice. The way Ryan pronounced certain words, the tremble of the vibrato, the sighs between verses. It was unmistakable. It was John Lennon's voice. Desperate for answers, Michael contacted Dr. James Harrison, a Beatles scholar from the University of Liverpool. He didn't mention who was singing, just attached the file. 48 hours later, the reply arrived. "Dear Mr. McKenna, the piece you send me is extraordinary. The chord progressions match John Lennon's songwriting style from 1962 to 1963. But more importantly, I found references to this exact song in my files." Dr. Harrison explained that in Paul McCartney's personal diary, dated August 23, 1963, there was a note. John had been working on a song about Lucy and glass gardens. He scrapped it, calling it too personal. Sarah and Michael stared at each other in stunned silence. Their 5-year-old son had just sung a song John Lennon had written 43 years earlier, a song the world had never heard. And that was only the beginning. Over the next few nights, Ryan sang 4 more songs: Strawberry Mine, Julia's Lullaby, Penny Lane Backwards, Tomorrow's Yesterday. Each one carried the same level of sophistication, each one linked uncannily to Lennon's private, unfinished work. Dr. Harrison dug through letters, half-finished notebooks, hidden archives. To his horror, every one of Ryan's songs matched. Ideas and fragments buried for decades, notes known to only a handful of scholars. His final email to Michael dripped with urgency. "Mr. McKenna, I need to know the source of these recordings immediately. They could rewrite the history of the Beatles." That night, Sarah held Ryan close, her heart breaking. Her son didn't just believe he was John Lennon. Somehow, he carried Lennon's private memories, his deepest creations. And then Ryan whispered something that froze her blood. "Mom, I still remember more songs, but these are really sad. They talk about how I'm going to die." December 2nd, 2006, 5:30 a.m. Ryan woke up sobbing. His cries tore through the house. "Where's Yoko? Why is she not coming to get me? She promised we'd always be together." Sarah rushed in, trying to calm him, but Ryan's grief was bottomless. "She has long black hair. She always wears white. She lives in our big house with lots of windows. Why isn't she here with me?" The McKennas froze. Ryan had never seen a picture of Yoko Ono. They owned no Beatles records, no documentaries. So how could he describe her so perfectly? That same afternoon, Ryan picked up crayons. He drew for 45 minutes, silent, focused. When he was done, he handed his parents a picture that made their stomachs turn. It wasn't childish scribbles, it was architectural detail. An apartment, floor-to-ceiling windows, a white grand piano in the center, hanging plants, a round bed covered in white sheets. "This is my place with Yoko," Ryan explained calmly. "The piano's right there because I could see the park while I played. Yoko sat in this chair while I worked, and that's where the machine was, where we recorded Double Fantasy." Michael's hands shook as he took the drawing. Later that night, he searched for photos of John and Yoko's apartment in the Dakota Building. The real photos left him speechless. Every detail matched: the windows overlooking Central Park, the piano, the plants, even the bed. And yes, in that same corner, the recording equipment had once been set up. The next day, it escalated again. At the dentist's office, Ryan spotted a small photo of Yoko Ono in an old magazine. He grabbed it, clutched it to his chest, and burst into tears. "It's her! It's my mom! Call her! Tell her Ryan's here! Tell her John's waiting!" He kissed the photo again and again. "I miss you so much. Why don't you come from me? You promised we'd never be apart." The receptionist stared in shock. Sarah scooped Ryan into her arms and fled. But even in the car, he kept crying. "She's sad, Mom. She thinks I'm gone forever. But I'm here. I'm waiting for her." That night, his words became darker. "Tomorrow we're going home, right? We're going to New York. She needs to know I'm back." On Christmas Eve 2006, the McKennas broke. Using their family savings, they bought 3 tickets to New York. This wasn't a vacation. It was a desperate search for answers. Because Ryan hadn't stopped begging to go home to Yoko. And now, there was only one place left to go.
Ryan's parents thought the worst was behind them. They were wrong. The flight from Liverpool to New York lasted 8 long hours. Ryan barely spoke. He just stared out the window, whispering every so often, "We're almost home. Yoko's gonna be so happy to see me." But when they landed at JFK, the impossible happened. Inside the taxi, their 5-year-old son leaned forward, giving the driver exact directions through Manhattan. "Take the FDR Drive up to 79th, then left onto Central Park West. Our house is at 1 West 2nd Street. The driver, a veteran cabbie named Giuseppe, turned around in disbelief. "Kid, how do you know Manhattan? You live here?" Ryan didn't even hesitate. "Yeah, I live in the Dakota Building. It's tall, with a big arch at the entrance. People always take pictures outside." The Menninas froze. Their son had never seen a map of New York, but his description was flawless. As they passed Central Park, Ryan pointed. "That's Strawberry Fields. Yoko and I used to walk there. She liked it in the mornings, fewer people." When the taxi finally stopped at the Dakota, Ryan bolted out, ran to the massive stone entrance, and pressed his small hands against the arch. Through tears, he whispered, "I'm home." The doorman stepped forward, uneasy. A man in his 60s, decades on the job. "You folks okay? The boy looks upset." Ryan stared straight at him. "You're new. Where's Harold? Harold always says hi when I get here." The man froze. Harold had been the Dakota's doorman in 1970s, until his death in 1995. Only longtime residents or devoted Lennon fans would know his name. Ryan's voice softened. "Harold used to give me mint candies. He always asked about my songs when Yoko and I came home late." The doorman stepped back, shaken. But Ryan wasn't finished. He turned to the bronze plaque at the entrance, pressed his palm against it, then began to sing. "Imagine there's no heaven." The sound wasn't a child's voice. It was deeper, mature, unmistakably Lennon's. Michael fumbled for his phone, recording as Ryan sang every word, every pause, every inflection identical to John Lennon. Tears streamed down the boy's face as the final note broke. Then he collapsed, sobbing. "I don't want to sing that song. It always scares me." The doorman whispered, stunned. "I've seen thousands of Lennon impersonators, but this isn't imitation. This boy sings exactly like him." That night, the Menninas replayed the recording over and over. Michael sent it to Dr. James Harrison in Liverpool. Hours later, the reply came back. "Mr. Mina, the vocal structure matches Lennon's recordings from 1971 exactly. But there's more. The delivery is identical to a private version John recorded here in the Dakota in 1980, just 2 weeks before his death. That tape was never released. Only one copy exists in Yoko Ono's archives." Sarah's hands trembled. Slower. Her son wasn't just singing like Lennon. He was singing like Lennon in his final, haunted days. And then, the nightmares began. December 26th, 4:17 a.m. Ryan woke screaming, his body drenched in sweat. "Mom, I dreamed about the man again. He's going to hurt me." Sarah tried to calm him, but Ryan shook his head violently. "It's not a nightmare. It's a memory." Clinging to her, he described a fat man with thick glasses holding a book, his eyes full of rage. He asked for my autograph. Then he pulled something shiny from his coat. Sharp pain in my back. Michael froze. Their son had never seen the footage of John Lennon's murder. They had never spoken the name Mark Dadpon Chapman. When asked for the date, Ryan whispered, "December 8th. It was cold. I wore my black coat. Yoko and I had been recording. She wanted dinner early, but before we left, a fan was waiting. I signed his book." Sarah's blood
ran cold. Every detail matched Lennon's final night, even the book, The Catcher in the Rye. Through tears, Ryan added one last memory. Before I went downstairs, I kissed Yoko and told her I loved her. I felt something bad was coming, but I didn't listen. 3 days later, the unthinkable happened. Through Dr. Harrison's connections, the Menninas secured a private meeting with Yoko Ono herself. December 29th, 2006, 3 p.m., the Dakota Building. They stepped into the apartment Ryan had drawn months before, down to the windows, the white piano, the round bed. Ryan walked calmly, like he'd lived there his whole life. But when he saw Yoko standing in the main room, he froze. Tears welled in his eyes. His small voice trembled. Slower. "Yoko, my love, I missed you so much." Yoko's face drained of color. She had dismissed every report, every rumor. But in that moment, hearing him, seeing the way he looked at her, she couldn't deny it. Every word, every gesture was John.
Yoko Ono sat perfectly still, her eyes locked on the boy in front of her. For a moment, time itself seemed to stop. Ryan, just 5 years old, slowly walked across the room and took her hands in his. "Why are you so sad?" he asked gently. "I can see it in your eyes. You've been crying a lot since I left." Tears welled up in Yoko's eyes. In 26 years, no one had ever spoken to her like that. No one had pierced the private grief she'd carried since John's death. Ryan looked over at the empty space where a white piano had once stood. "Do you still have the piano?" he asked softly. "Can I play you the song I never got to finish for you?" He climbed onto the bench and began to play. The melody was new to Yoko's ears, but its style was unmistakably John's. Ryan's small fingers moved with a skill no 5-year-old should possess. As he played, he sang, "Yoko, my eternal dream. Even death can't divide what we've been." Yoko sank into her favorite chair, the very chair she had always sat in while John composed. No one had told Ryan about that. No one could have. When the music faded, Ryan leaned in close and whispered something that shattered her. "Do you still have my last letter? The one I wrote the day before I died? The one that said if anything happened to me, I'd find a way to reach you and tell you our love is forever?" Yoko froze. That letter existed. It was hidden in a private safe. Not even Sean, John's son, knew about it. Her voice trembled. How do you know about that letter?" Ryan gave her a sad, knowing smile. "Because I wrote it, my love, and I've come to keep my promise." For the next 20 minutes, Ryan and Yoko spoke alone. When Michael and Sarah were called back into the room, Yoko looked transformed. Her eyes shone with a mixture of hope and disbelief she hadn't felt in decades. "Ryan told me things only John and I knew," she whispered. "Details of our most private conversations, secrets I've kept for 26 years. Ryan turned to his parents, his small hands trembling. "Mom, Dad, I need to explain why I'm here, why I came back." His voice was steady, almost adult. "When I was John, I had one last song I wanted to record. It was called The Bridge Between Worlds. It was about death, about how love can live on beyond the physical life. It was going to be my farewell gift for humanity." He walked back to the piano and began to play. The melody was otherworldly, haunting, unlike anything they had ever heard. His voice shifted completely into John Lennon's, deep, aching, unmistakable. The song lasted exactly 4 minutes and 17 seconds. When it ended, Ryan turned to everyone in the room. "This song has to reach the world. It's my final message. That's why I came back, to finish what I couldn't before." Yoko walked over and embraced him like he was the most precious thing in the universe. "John, my John, how long can you stay with me?" she whispered. Ryan's eyes were full of love and sadness. "Not for long, my love. I can feel this experience coming to an end. But before I go, you have to promise me something. This song must be recorded and shared with the world. It's my final legacy, my proof that true love never dies." 3 months later, Ryan McKenna stopped remembering being John Lennon. The memories faded until he was just a 5-year-old boy from Liverpool again. But the bridge between worlds lived on. It was professionally recorded and became one of the most extraordinary musical phenomena in modern history. Yoko Ono publicly stated, "I lived with John Lennon for years. I've known his soul more deeply than anyone else in the world, and I can say with absolute certainty that Ryan McKenna, for an unexplainable period of time, was the reincarnation of my husband." To this day, scientists, musicologists, and paranormal researchers still can't explain it. How a 5-year-old could access memories, knowledge, and skills that belonged to John Lennon. What they do know is that they witnessed the most documented and verified case of reincarnation in modern history. And Ryan McKenna, now just a regular teenager, sometimes still wakes up humming tunes he doesn't remember learning, with an unexplained longing for a woman named Yoko, and an apartment in New York he swears was once his home.
For more than a decade, Ryan had tried to live as a normal teenager. He avoided anything Beatles-related. He stayed away from Lennon's music, his interviews, even his image. To his parents, Margaret and David, it seemed like the memories had finally disappeared. But everything changed in the early hours of December 8, 2018, exactly 38 years to the day of John Lennon's murder. Ryan woke up in a cold panic. His hands trembled as he frantically scribbled into a notebook, page after page, in a scrawling Liverpool accent that wasn't his own. From that night on, the floodgates opened. For months, Ryan battled visions and fragments of thoughts he couldn't control. Psychologists, neurologists, even priests tried to help, but nothing made sense. After more than 10 years of silence, the memories had returned, stronger, sharper, more relentless than ever before. And now, Ryan wasn't just recalling John Lennon's life. He was revealing things no biographer had ever documented. He spoke of incense Yoko burned during meditation in their Dakota apartment. He recalled the sound of arguments from October 1980 about how Sean should be raised. He described manuscripts hidden in a shoebox behind a piano. And then came the claim that terrified his family most. John Lennon, he said, had written a secret farewell letter to Yoko, hidden in a place no one had ever checked. On March 15, 2019, Ryan told his parents something that chilled them to the bone. "I need to go to New York. Yoko has been waiting for me for 38 years. The obsession only grew stronger. On the flight, Ryan sketched detailed floor plans of apartment 72 in the Dakota Building, layouts of every room, every piece of furniture, even the precise spots Lennon used to hide his writings. At the hotel, he whispered to his mother, "Behind the bathroom mirror, 3rd floorboard, left side of the bed." She never looked there. Margaret filmed everything. His drawings were exact to the centimeter. Even handwriting experts would later confirm that the frantic notes Ryan produced matched John Lennon's script almost perfectly. But before meeting Yoko Ono, Ryan insisted on making a detour. He phoned Abbey Road Studios in London, telling them he had information about a secret room Lennon once used for experimental recordings. Engineers laughed. Abbey Road gets hundreds of wild calls from obsessive fans every year. But then, Ryan rattled off technical details about a 1970s mixing console, equipment codes, and even the exact hallway where it was hidden. Information only longtime employees would know. The next day,
Ryan arrived with his mother and a BBC film crew documenting cases of reincarnation. And what followed left even the most skeptical experts stunned. Inside Abbey Road, Ryan ignored the tourist areas everyone knew. Instead, he walked with total confidence through maintenance hallways and service stairs, leading the group into restricted sections of the building that even current staff barely remembered existed. Then, he stopped in front of what looked like an ordinary wall. He pressed his hand against the concrete and whispered, "It's here. John sealed it after we left, but everything is still inside."
What happened in the next 2 hours defied every logical explanation. Ryan moved through Abbey Road Studios as though the building itself recognized him. He didn't linger at the iconic tourist spots, the ones every Beatles fan makes a pilgrimage to. Instead, he went straight for locked doors and shadowed corridors, places even current staff barely remembered existed. "This way," he whispered with total certainty, guiding the group down narrow service stairs and forgotten maintenance hallways. In the basement, Ryan stopped abruptly, resting his palm against what appeared to be an ordinary concrete wall. His expression hardened. "It's here," he said quietly, tapping the surface with his knuckles. "John had it sealed after we were done, but the equipment, it's still inside." Mark Stevens, the studio's longtime architect, called in a demolition crew. For 3 grueling hours, drills tore into the wall. Dust filled the corridor, every vibration echoing like thunder. Finally, the concrete broke, and what lay behind it left the room in stunned silence. A hidden chamber, roughly 4 by 3 meters, perfectly preserved, as if time itself had been locked away. Rows of gleaming 70s recording gear sat waiting, untouched for decades. But the true revelation sat on a single dusty table. Reels of master tapes, each one labeled in John Lennon's unmistakable handwriting. "Secret Sessions, October 1969, confidential." Ryan turned to the BBC cameras, his voice trembling but firm. These are the 4 songs John wrote before he died, songs he never played for anyone, not even Yoko. But the 4th tape, discovered on April 18, 2019, would reveal something that should have stayed buried forever. On it, John Lennon's voice spoke from 1969, describing his own death in chilling detail. He mentioned December 8, 1980, the Dakota entrance, a man named Mark. 5 shots, even the way his killer would say his name before pulling the trigger. But what froze every soul in that sound booth wasn't the prophecy itself. It was what John seemed to know about Mark David Chapman. Details that not even the FBI had uncovered during their investigation. Ryan insisted on hearing the tape alone. For 2 hours, he locked himself in Abbey Road's sound booth, scribbling furiously into a notebook. When he finally emerged, his face was drained of all color. His hands shook as he whispered just one word: "John." He knew. He knew every detail, where, how, and even why Chapman would act. And the recording went further. John's voice described private conversations between Chapman and his wife Gloria after the murder. Conversations never recorded, never leaked, never documented in official case files. Yet every word on the tape matched reality. Dr. Richard Peterson, the forensic psychologist who had once studied Chapman, was called in to authenticate what they were hearing. He confirmed it. The call Chapman made to his wife that night, crying, broken, whispering that John asked him to free his soul, had indeed happened. But no one, not even investigators, had ever made it public. Ryan then delivered the most disturbing twist of all. He said Chapman wasn't really John's killer. John had orchestrated his own death, using his mind. He needed to die that night, in that exact place, at that exact time, so that his soul could reset and return. And on the tape, John himself explained it. My soul needs 26 years. Liverpool, 2006. A boy with brown hair, green eyes. His name will start with R. Ryan McKenna. That's how I'll find my way back home. The prediction was beyond impossible, yet it matched reality. By April 22, 2019, John Lennon, who had avoided Ryan for 13 years, could no longer ignore what was unfolding. The Abbey Road tapes had changed everything. He agreed to a private meeting in his Soho apartment. No cameras, no crew, just him and Ryan. For Sean, it was more than curiosity. It was a final test, a secret question he had carried alone for 40 years, one only his father could ever answer. He looked Ryan in the eyes and asked, voice trembling, "If you're really my dad, then tell me, what happened on the night of September 15, 1978, when I woke up crying at 3 a.m.? Ryan's eyes fluttered closed. When they opened again, his irises seemed deeper, grayer, his whole body shifting into a familiar slouch. And when he spoke, the Liverpool accent wasn't just stronger, it was older. He taught you a secret song, a song only you and I would know. Sean whispered the answer through his tears. You said that. And Ryan began to hum. A simple, childish tune. The very melody John had created on that long-forgotten September night to soothe his 3-year-old son. Sean collapsed into tears. His father's promise had come back to him through Ryan, and Ryan's words cut through the silence like a blade. Because I kept my promise, son, I came back to you.
A hallway sealed off decades ago. Ryan stopped, staring at a bare stretch of wall, as if he could still see the furniture that had once stood there. The letter is behind the Victorian mirror, he said quietly. 3 construction workers followed him to the main bathroom. The ornate mirror he spoke of had been removed in 1995, but Ryan pointed to the exact place it had hung for 15 years. Break through this wall, he instructed with absolute certainty. 3.2 meters from the key, 1.8 from the floor. 2 hours of hammering and dust later, the workers pried open a narrow cavity hidden behind the plaster. Inside lay a single sealed envelope, John Lennon's unmistakable handwriting across the front. John Lennon, for Yoko, open only if I don't come back in 40 years. Yoko's hands shook violently as she tore it open. The letter, dated December 7, 1980, held instructions so specific they bordered on the impossible. It described Ryan McKenna in exacting detail, his appearance, his temperament, even the crescent-shaped scar on his forehead he'd carried since birth. If you're reading this, the letter said, it means I managed to come back through the boy I described. Yoko, our love went beyond death, but there's a mission I must finish before I leave for good. The note contained coordinates to 3 more hidden caches inside the Dakota, coordinates that, if real, would upend everything the world thought it knew about life, death, and reincarnation. Ryan looked directly into Yoko's eyes. Love, you kept my secrets for 39 years. Now you need to help me find the others. April 27, 2019. The second coordinate led Ryan to the Dakota's basement. Beneath a concrete slab, sealed in a metal box, they unearthed something that rewrote Beatles' history. Photographs and recordings of a clandestine meeting on November 15, 1980, just 3 weeks before John's death. The photos showed all 4 Beatles together one final time, John, Paul, George, and Ringo, seated in a circle in the studio. But what stunned everyone was John's face. He looked as though he already knew it would be the last time. Ryan's hands trembled as he held the prints. Paul didn't want to come, he murmured. He's still angry about the breakup, but I told him it was urgent. Margaret McKenna, who was documenting every discovery, immediately phoned Paul McCartney. With his permission, the call was recorded. Paul, Ryan said into the receiver, do you remember what you told me that night when George went to the bathroom? You said you were afraid I was losing my mind. Silence. Then Paul's voice, low and shaking. My God, Ryan, is that really you? I told you I knew you were going to die soon. Ryan continued softly. And you answered me, John, stop talking nonsense. You're going to live to 80 like the rest of us. But I insisted. I told you my soul needed to come back to finish something I left undone. Paul confirmed every detail. The secret meeting had happened exactly as Ryan described. And he revealed something else. That night, the four Beatles recorded an unreleased version of Let It Be with different lyrics. John singing, "Let it be, let my soul return to me. When the darkness comes to take me, I will find my way back home." The most startling revelation came when Ryan recounted a private exchange between John and George Harrison from that same night. George had asked John if he truly believed in reincarnation. "I told George my soul had already chosen its next body," Ryan said quietly. "A kid in Liverpool, born in 2001. He'd have my eyes, my passion for music. When he turned 5, he'd point to a picture of me and say, 'That's me.'" George Harrison died in 2001. Before passing, he left a sealed note with his lawyer, instructing it to be opened only if a boy named Ryan McKenna claimed to be John Lennon reincarnated. The note confirmed every word of that 1980 conversation. Ryan looked directly into the camera crew. "That night, I told you something else. Something about why I needed to come back. The reason my soul couldn't rest." April 29, 2019. The third coordinate from the hidden letter led to the most astonishing find of all. Behind a false wall in John Lennon's private recording studio, Ryan discovered a time capsule containing 47 unpublished manuscripts and a 23-minute video John had recorded just 3 days before his death. On the screen, John Lennon stared straight into the camera, speaking as if he knew exactly who would be watching nearly 34 years later. "Ryan," he said, "if you're seeing this, it means my plan worked. You found everything I left for you." Yoko slumped into a chair. She had never seen the footage before. "The world needs to know the truth about why I came back," John continued. "It wasn't just to prove death isn't the end. It's to deliver a message humanity needs before it's too late." Ryan sat before the TV, tears streaking his face as his past self spoke to him. Back in 1980, John predicted, by 2019, the world will be on the brink of a spiritual crisis. Technology will advance so far that people will forget what it truly means to be human. Social media will create a generation of empty souls. Depression and anxiety will reach pandemic levels. Every prediction had come true. John even described addiction to smartphones, the rise of social media, a global mental health crisis, and the COVID-19 pandemic. "That's why I had to come back as Ryan," John said in the video, "to remind the world that love is the only thing that survives death, that our souls are connected beyond time and space." And then came the final, chilling disclosure. John was not alone. He revealed that other musicians, artists, and spiritual leaders had also reincarnated in this same generation, each carrying a piece of a collective mission.
David Bowie came back in 2019 as a girl in Tokyo. Freddie Mercury, Ryan said, is now a 12-year-old in Brazil, already writing songs. Bob Marley reincarnated in the same Jamaican town where he was born the first time. Ryan claimed he knew all of them intimately, their phone numbers, their real names, even private details about their current lives. The 47 unpublished manuscripts he'd uncovered weren't just words on paper. They were brand new songs John Lennon had written to be delivered to the world through Ryan. Music about global healing, spiritual unity, and the awakening of human consciousness. "My mission here is almost done," Ryan said, staring into the cameras. "But before I go, the world needs to hear these songs. It needs to remember that we are all one." By May 5, 2019, the revelations had shaken not just fans, but the global scientific community. Researchers were demanding definitive proof. Dr. Ian Stevenson, the world's leading expert on reincarnation at the University of Virginia, proposed the most ambitious test ever designed to see if consciousness survives death. Ryan would undergo MRI scans, brainwave analysis, computerized voice recognition, and something never tried before, a live televised hypnosis session. The BBC broadcast it worldwide to more than 50 million viewers. Ryan lay hooked up to machines while Dr. Stevenson guided him into a deep trance. "Ryan, I want you to go back to December 8,
1980, Stevenson said softly. The results stunned the room. Brain activity shifted to patterns identical to a 40-year-old man. Ryan's breathing changed. His young 18-year-old face slackened and for a moment looked eerily like John Lennon's. "I'm coming out of the Dakota," Ryan said. His voice, now pure Liverpool, matched Lennon's last interviews down to cadence and tone. "It's 10:45 p.m. Yoko's upstairs with Sean. I see Mark." Computer analysis confirmed the impossible. Ryan's voice matched John Lennon's by 97.3%. He described intimate sensations, private thoughts, even the metallic taste in John's mouth just before the gunshots. "I know it's gonna happen. My soul's leaving my body. Mark's crying while he shoots. He doesn't want to, but something's forcing him." Then came the strangest part. Ryan began describing the time between John's death and his own birth. "My soul's in a place that's not light or dark. There are others here. I recognize George. He's planning his next comeback. David's picking his new family. We all have specific missions." Dr. Stevenson asked the question everyone held their breath for. "Ryan, can you tell us exactly when your soul entered Ryan McKenna's body?" "October 15th, 2006, 4:23 in the morning. Ryan had a bike accident the day before. His soul left his body. I came in at that moment. That's why he woke up thinking he was John Lennon." Medical records confirmed it. Ryan McKenna had suffered a concussion and a small stroke on October 14th, 2006. He'd been unconscious for 16 hours. When he awoke, his first words were, "My mission here is done. The world now knows that death isn't real. Love goes beyond everything. Souls come back to finish what they left undone." From that day on, Ryan never again spoke with John Lennon's memories. The mission, scientifically proving reincarnation, was complete. But the 47 songs John Lennon left for the world are still waiting to be heard. Will you be the one to find them?